All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London's Blue podcast, hopefully your favorite Chelsea podcast out there, and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Dan, one of your hosts here alongside Nick. We are no longer in New Orleans. We're back in our respective home territories, missing out on the opportunity to record about a Chelsea win in person. So rare, Nick, we couldn't align the stars to make that one happen. But a win is a win, and it's going to be a much more celebratory episode on a Tuesday night here in February.
Yeah, about fucking time. It's been a minute.
Is that your 3-word match review spoiler?
It might as well be. Yeah. Excited that we got the win. There's a lot going on. Obviously, we'll kind of touch on the results and do a little bit on the protests at the end of this one. It was kind of a weird day, weird atmosphere. Yeah,
that happened today.
There sure was. Yeah, and we'll talk about it and all that stuff. But you know what? It's a day where Chelsea do pick up a critical 3 points, Dan. We said this run, the next 4 games, right? We have Southampton at home. We go away to Copenhagen. We come back to play Leicester, and then we stay there to play Copenhagen. This is the 4. You got to win all 4. You got to win all 4 in some style. And you know what? Chelsea did just that today, and so that's exciting.
Here's my recommendation. Win actually your next 4 now, because you got that first one out of the way, because that last one would be the away trip to Arsenal, and that would be the last game before the break. So let's just add that one too. Let's change it and say these are now the next 4 you got to win. Just shift the expectation.
Nothing would give me greater joy than to go to the Emirates and shut those morons up. It's not likely, but you know what? It'd be damn sweet.
Look, it is the last men's fixture before we will be in London to watch Chelsea play Tottenham at home. So fingers crossed they head into the international break in the finest of form that they can hopefully then carry into a return, because that's not always the case for the Chelsea Football Club. But look, we are going to get into this one, as Nick mentioned. We're going to talk about what happened in the match. We'll take a look at some player-specific performances, a couple of things that are starting to work really well for Enzo Maresca, like Pedro Neto. Woo, what a day for him. And Nkunku getting involved too, which was nice to see. But we're also going to take a look at some of the debutants, as well as the youth academy players are getting a chance to get involved, that upcoming run of fixtures and what that means for Chelsea's league position back in the 4th right now, and what that could mean potentially for end of the season probabilities. And then we will talk about the protests that happened, fan protests that happened outside of Stamford Bridge before the match today. But before we do that, let's get some 3-word match reviews, Nick. These are the way to set the stage for the listener. Summaries in 3 words or less.
Nice to be able to do one about a win, because I think there's been a lot of negative ones recently. Kevsta with glimmer of hope. Tyson with Southampton slump busters. That's fun. Marco 21 with joy in Mudville. That's good. Good friend of the pod and part of the Porto 5, Andrew McDougall with Conference League tune-up. Absolutely. Leojic with Blues Sink Saints, and then Zhangzhou with It's Only Southampton. And look, it is only Southampton. They are a historically bad Premier League team, trending to potentially be worse than Derby County, which is really saying something. They are that bad. So look, we have to contextualize this a bit, Dan, but it was still a good win.
Wasn't the Sheffield team recently, actually, didn't that become one of the worst Premier League teams of all time? Sunderland?
Sunderland I think they had more points, though. I think that Derby team still had the fewest points. Okay. We'll Google this.
It was Derby 11, Sunderland at 15, and then Sheffield and Huddersfield both finished the season with negative 16. But I'm pretty sure Sheffield had a pretty terrible negative goal differential. But that's neither here nor there, because that's not Chelsea focus. I went with refreshing midweek reset. Sometimes, look, I work in tech, sometimes turning it off and turning it back on again solves a whole lot of problems. Maybe that's what Enzo Maresca did here. He turned everybody off for a day, turned it back on, and we got this performance. So happy, again, to be talking about a win. I think there's a lot of positive things that we can take away from this one.
Yep. I went with a temporary reprieve. Chelsea now do not play for 9 more days. That is no weekend Chelsea match. Freaking amazing. Chelsea doesn't have to ruin our weekend again. This is so fun, and we don't play again until Copenhagen next Thursday. So look, Dan.
Well, we would want to correct people that there is a Chelsea match over the weekend. It's just the women's team, away to Brighton to continue their blistering run of form in the league. If they win that one, they'd be up to 43 points with no matches in hand, but that would put them before Manchester. I think they'll play after Manchester United, but that would be potentially up to a 10-point if there's any type of bouncing that happens with that United fixture. And every point that they can pick up between now and then means we could potentially be that much closer seeing them lift the league trophy when we're over there. Probably going to be a game too early, but we'll fingers crossed it for it.
Absolutely. So no men's team. That's a good clarification. No men's football this weekend to ruin your weekend. You can go about, have yourself a free weekend full of joy and laughter. It's going to be great.
All right. Well, as always, we just want to thank our wonderful community of the Sports Podcast through 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's always appreciated. Go subscribe on YouTube. You can hit the bell icon to get notified. And like and comment on the videos too. You can hit us up on our free weekly newsletter, The London Dispatch. Sam writes that, puts it out every week. It's wonderful free content for you. And then you can also get involved in the conversation in a free or paid capacity in our Discord community. But look, it's match review time. Was Southampton this past Tuesday, February 25th, 3 days left in the month, and Chelsea got a win in right before the finish of it to end February on a great note. It was the Premier League at Stamford Bridge, 4-0 scoreline. Whew, felt good. Getting to talk about multiple Chelsea goals and a clean sheet is just, I don't know how I feel anymore. This is really weird. This is a weird type of pod to do at this point in the season. Nkunku in the 24th minute. Pedro Neto in the 36th minute, Levi Cole in the 44th minute, and Mark Cucurella in the 78th minute as we drew it up to get this one rounded out. And just as a reminder, the starters, Nick, Jorgensen between the sticks. It was Gusto, Tosin, Colwell, and Cucurella, along with Caicedo and Enzo back together, and Nkunku, Palmer, and Jadon Sancho on the right in this one, and Pedro Neto again playing that false nine, the furthest forward. So... and we saw all 5 subs used, which was, I guess, pretty cool, too, considering we had, pointed fingers at Enzo Maresca for not using his bench effectively. And he maybe used it a little more effectively today. Maybe you could argue some earlier subs could have happened, too.
Some earlier subs. Yeah, I mean, as we're up.
Not 90th minute?
3-0 at half. I mean, yeah, that would have been the time, I think, to potentially bring on someone like Josh, someone like Shim, those guys. That would have been great. But yeah, I mean, it's a 4-0 win, and I think there are some better performances in this one. Like that to me, you look at some of the the sofa scores here. You look at your Enzo Fernandez on a 9. You look at Nkunku on an 8-4, Cucurella and Colwell in the mid 8s. Pedro Neto in the low 8s. Like it starts to kind of look like a team that's playing up to its potential. Again, the opponent is terrible, very bad, and awful. They are tremendously bad. So contextualize this. If it were against Villa last weekend winning 4-0, or Palace beating Villa 4-1 today, that would be a different story, but it was not. It was Southampton. This was our last freebie of the year.
You can only play the team in front of you, and you have to take all the points available. So I do understand contextualizing who we're playing against, but anything to break us out of our slump, because we have been these slump breakers for other people. So I'm not going to go, I think, too hard on the context standpoint, because we've played a bunch of teams that you would argue should be gimmies this season, and we have not actually been able to get the gimme. So I view nothing as sacred in this Premier League season for Chelsea. So I'm not taking any of these points for granted. 3 points, huge, regardless of the team in front of us, particularly with how few matches remain in the calendar. There's a couple of top line stats that may be interesting to you, Nick. 2.32 XG for Chelsea, so finishing well above our expected goal on the day. 0.62 for Southampton. We had 7 big chances. It did feel like at points in the first half we could have been up 5-0 with some of the uncharacteristic misses from one of our key players. You might know him as Cole Palmer. It'd be a very interesting one there. 19 total shots just remember, like, we had 7 big chances. There were only 7 total shots from Southampton. They only had 2 big chances on the day. We did put their goalkeeper to work with 6 saves for him. We had 1 yellow card to there too. Can't really gripe totally about the refereeing performance. So I feel like that's probably a good thing to be able to say, is like, he didn't become a main character. He wasn't necessarily a villain. So that's good. And then a fun random stat from our good friend Sam, CFC Central. A first home clean sheet in the league in nearly, wait for it, 1, 2, 3 months was Aston Villa 87 days ago.
And it feels like it. That's one of those that feels like it, Dan. It does feel like it's been 3 months since we've experienced this. It's also, I think one thing I'd point out about this game is, despite the fact that we are much, much better than Southampton, only 60% possession. We did play on the counter a little bit in this game. It wasn't as like 78% possession in their half, allow them to counter, get a cheap goal. I thought it was a pretty balanced attacking output on that side. And I think that, Pedro Neto's speed up top does help us have like a different option there. And that's kind of an interesting angle. So, I just kind of looked at the possession kind of at different points in the game today. And I was like, we're getting up to 64, and then it came back down to like 58 and it ended at 60. And I think 60 is an okay place to be. Anything more than that, you get into this boring ass pet ball possession thing, and it just drives me nuts.
I mean, anytime they had less than 42% possession this season, they've registered a loss. So, like, 3-2 to Leicester, a 5-0 against Tottenham, a 3-1 against Arsenal, 3-1 against United, and then there are 2 matches against Liverpool. So this actually sits within like the third lowest possession result that they've had the entirety of the season. And so they very much, like they prefer the very few wins they have come with a maximum amount of possession. So they definitely like to be able to be competitive within that. But they've had up to 71% possession and still lost the game. So Southampton can have the ball. It's fine. They just don't know how to do anything with it this season. But Nick, it's a win, a rare win, which means you can bust out a shithouse moment of the match.
That's a good question. What is a good shithouse moment of the match? Was there anything shithouse in this?
It was good to see goal celebrations again. I mean, I feel like a goal celebration always has the potential for shithouse. Pedro Neto's looked really spicy on the day. I felt like he had a lot of vitriol in his.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have one. I'm going to be honest with you. It's been so long since I've registered a shithouse moment that I don't think I was even looking for one.
Wow. We're going to put you on internet. Yeah. You've got 9 days to return to form, hopefully.
Hey, look, I can't wait. 9-day break. Let's go.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out. Look, we'll get our first ad break out of the way when we get back. We will talk about, do we believe the bounce back? And starting to talk about some of the player performances that really delighted us and all fans on the day. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Okay, Nick, so coming back, there's a bounce. There's a start of a bounce. It's a bounce back for Chelsea. It's the opportunity to return to winning ways, to close out the season on a very strong final foot. I'm here. I'm plugged in. I'm ready to go. We're back. We're 100% locked in. Just going to dominate the rest of the season. Maybe overselling it. Maybe partially overselling it. Yeah. I do think there are some things here, though, that are exciting. I mean, the Pedro Neto kind of solve for the central attacker has been nice. Cucurella finding himself back into form. Enzo retouching some of that form he had in that real hot streak early in the season. Some things that we had not been seeing consistently. And again, I think your point earlier about this is Southampton. You have to know the expectation of the people that are playing in front of you, maybe more similar to a championship side than they are a Premier League team side. But at the end of the day, you have to have one that you can start to stack on top of. And this, to me, in general, was the game we needed to reset, push forward, and now go actively attack the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a decent performance. There were points in the first half before the first goal where I was pretty frustrated. There was a lot of standing around. And I think the goal from Nkunku was incredibly important in this one. He did something he hasn't done very frequently in a Chelsea shirt, which is pounce on an opportunity that presented itself to him and kind of meet it first. Wasn't, on the back foot. He's been on the back foot a lot lately. So I thought that was a good moment for him to kind of take that deflected Tosin header off of the corner and put it in the back of the net. It's a really good header. It's a really good finish. So I was pleased about that. And I think just in general, Pedro Neto's doing a lot of things that Nico Jackson has previously done, making a lot of unselfish runs on the channel, doing, kind of stretching a defender out to allow other space for your Cole Palmers and Nkunkus and that variety of folks to get forward, making himself available, even though he's only, 5'7", 5'8", making himself available for a long ball to try and, head it down and take possession or do a quick pass out to retain possession. He really started to look decent here over the last couple of games when he has, I think, really struggled in a Chelsea shirt. And, the fact that he gets the goal, it's a phenomenal finish. It's a really phenomenal finish off of a phenomenal move. It's great Enzo pass to Nkunku, a great Nkunku pass to Neto, and a very good in-stride left-footed finish that Ramsdale just didn't have a chance at. This is a good moment for him because, there's a month and change, before, Nico might be back. We don't know. These muscular injuries have setbacks all the time. So even if Nico is back after the international break or whatever, he's probably not going to be 2-3 games a week fit. So this could be an important moment for Pedro Neto to kind of say, no one else has really worked as a striker up top, and I have experience doing this before. I'm going to give it a go and try and make myself, useful in this team. And I think the last couple of games have been an interesting solve for that, like you said.
It's going to be really interesting, I think, in the next couple of weeks here with the available players kind of on a diminished side. This solution working for Enzo Maresca, at least, it looked like it was starting to kind of come together for Villa, though there was that defensive collapse that really didn't allow us to take kind of full enjoyment out of the start of seeing something work there. We see this result. We start to feel better about Pedro Neto playing centrally, playing that furthest forward attacking role. And now we have a match against Copenhagen. We'll have the match against Leicester, and we'll have a match against Copenhagen again. Typically, Nkuknu has been the forward position, like the furthest forward position. Be interesting to see what happens with Maresca, considering that now Neto's kind of been his guy in that 9 spot. So does that mean Nkuknu starts in the Conference League games against Copenhagen and Neto becomes a sub because you have essentially a Thursday match to a Sunday match? Very short turnaround time to kind of be ready and be fully fit for that. It's going to be a big question for him to answer for the upcoming set of it. I will say, really, really cool from like the Pedro Neto perspective is that with the goal and assist today, I mean, that takes him up to 7 goal contributions. He very easily, and that's just in Premier League. He then only has to get 4 more the remainder of the season to match what he had last season at Wolves. So like there's a really large possibility. And he gets 12. 12 would be his best ever return in a league season across his entire career. Like, so he's actually potentially on a trend line here to have his best senior season, which would be absolutely phenomenal. Get it done right at this time, my guy. We would really, really appreciate you to deliver it.
It couldn't happen at a better time. I mean, if he goes on a scoring run here, or even an assisting run, like however the ball goes into the fucking net, I don't care. Like, I don't care if it's hit off of someone's hip and it just bounces in and we score 5 goals that way. That's great. Call us the hips don't lie. That's what we'll be called. That would be great.
Get a Shakira sponsorship out of it for the front of the kit.
Now we're talking. Get us into the booth. We need this. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited for him, and importantly because I've been hard on him. I think a lot of people have been hard on him. He has not been super effective this season. I think the effort has been there. He's certainly improved defensively from where he was. When he came to Chelsea, I think that has been an improvement. But it's not been a good run for him, and to put it forward at a critical time where Chelsea have a lot to play for and a lot of work to do in these last 11 matches in the league, and obviously the conference league being the other competition. I mean, it's going to be really, really important if he can make this gap between when Nico gets hurt and he's put into this kind of false nine role. If he can make this work for 4 or 5 matches, boy, what a incredible stopgap that would be. If he's able to get a goal or an assist a game, and really just kind of put in the incredible amount of effort. He was gassed at the end of this one, and there have been very few times, where Nico's looked as gassed at the end of a game as Pedro Neto looked at the end of this one. And I think it shows you how much work that Nico Jackson does and how effortlessly he does it. He's making runs. He's charging forward, doing the pressing, getting back, doing the hold up play. The amount of energy that Nico Jackson expels in a game is crazy. And watching Pedro Neto do it, it just looked a little harder. But he was semi-effective today. I think the test is going to be, Dan, can he be effective as we head into the Conference League, whatever role that he plays, Leicester and Arsenal. These are the moments.
Yeah, one stat I found interesting was that this is the first time Pedro Neto has ever scored and assisted in the same Premier League game. And he kind of feels like he's been in the Premier League for forever now. So really good for him to have that type of night. I mean, he, is effectively in his last 4 Premier League appearances, 3 starts, 1 sub appearance. He's had 4 shots on target and 2 goals. That's a nice return, not a massive sample size, but you do feel better about it. And like this game, only 1 shot in total, only 1 shot on target. It ends up being a goal. So really, really nice to see there. Enzo Maresca did have a couple comments on him. He did mention kind of context was on the injuries, and he mentioned trying different solutions. He said we tried it with Pedro as a number 9 last week. It worked good then as tonight as well. So really nice to see kind of the nod from the gaffer, as it were, to tip the hat to Pedro Neto for being a part of the solution in this time. I think a lot of other people point out the fact they felt like Mark Cucurella had dropped off a bit, but this was another night where he kind of came back to being a strong contributor on that left-hand side. Is that how you felt, Nick? Was this a return from him?
It was, again, I want to see it against a better team, frankly. But, I think whereas he was in my player of the season run earlier in the year, he has not been as good lately. I think there's been a ton of reasons for that. And as we all know, this team really does try and defend it as a unit. They're not very successful at it, but he is a critical component to that. And I would say that, he's been caught out and made some individual errors in, previous matches. He's been pushed way, way forward. He was in the first 30 minutes of this game, he was by far our most effective attacking player in the way that he was moving across the entire pitch, winning the ball back, bobbing in and out of Southampton's back line. Looked easily the most effective winger that we had on the pitch at that point. And then,
it's a fun heat map. It really is a fun heat map to look at. If you're interested, you go to sofascore.com, look at the player statistics for this one, and look at his heat map. It's a very fun one.
It's absolutely bananas. But I do think like this is a player that if he can get back to doing all the right things and less of the wrong things in this critical stretch as we end the season, it could be a difference maker. He could really be a difference maker between, now and the end of May when Chelsea are, really fighting for stuff. And, obviously the goal helps, it's a nice cherry on top, but the defensive work that he did, especially after the amount that he ran against Villa, was impressive.
Yeah, it was a fun stat Squawka put out that Marc Cucurella has scored more goals in his last 11 Premier League games of 3 than he did in the 94 previous matches combined of 1. Like, very fun. Again, I think when Cucurella is having fun and we're like having this chance to joke about it on the podcast, and like, he gets a chance to banter back with the Stamford Bridge faithful or the away support with goofy goal celebrations and things of that nature. Like, that's when things are working right. And so, like, let's see more of this Cucurella heading into the end of the season here. Enzo Fernandez was another one. A really, really cool stat. first player to create 5+ chances, win 5+ duels, and win possession 5+ times in a Premier League game multiple times this season. Bournemouth and Southampton, only player in the Premier League to do it. So pretty comprehensive involvement from him in this game, really making sure to, advance the ball, some really, really delicious looking passes that he was able to put into players' feet, whether it was leading up to kind of a goal or just even to break down the Southampton team. He felt very integral today. And again, another player that if he can find this form and hold it like he did last time for another 9 or 10 games to help us bridge to the end of the season here. I mean, he's going to have to maintain it, but this was exactly, again, what supporters have wanted to see from a guy we brought in from Benfica, that we brought in from a World Cup winning team to deliver these type of performances. And like, if we could see more of these between now and the end of the season, we are going to be in real good shape.
Yeah, I mean, he also was the first Chelsea player to create 3 big chances and record 7+ key passes in a single Premier League match over the last 10 seasons as well. That's another stat from tonight.
I do like that one. That one's nice.
So pulling the strings type of moment for him. I mean, look, because of the sporting director's decisions to not reinforce the midfield, it is imperative that he and Moises Caicedo stay fit. And obviously we've had a couple of decent breaks over the last couple of months where, you go a week without playing a match or in this case, 9 days without playing a match, right? So he's going to have time to rest his body and to get, himself ready for the onslaught that happens at the end of the season. But it's imperative that he stays healthy. I mean, even in this kind of deeper role today, because Reece James didn't kind of occupy the midfield like he did against Southampton, which pushed Enzo forward into kind of a more dangerous place. He still was making stuff happen. And, again, I just pray that it happens against the big teams because, if he is able to do some of the defense splitting stuff that we know he can do, the balls over the top or through, the balls out wide that help to break up, a moment of pressure, the fact that he's able to make, tiny intricate passes in and around the box that are semi-effective instead of just going backwards and passing around the horn again just to keep possession. Like if he's able to really be at his best over the next 11 Premier League matches, it'll give us fighting chance, because it's not as if we have, Cole Palmer right now firing on all cylinders. And so the goals are going to have to be spread out. The assists are going to have to be spread out. You can't just rely on that single cog anymore. And he's a very expensive cog. So I would really like it if, he were able to really start to throw his weight around and make some of these big moments come to life, almost make the assist impossible not to score. Like I'm talking those kind of passes, right? Like he can do it. We've seen him do it. We want to see him do it really consistently now.
And then, maybe kind of to close on the attack, I think a better performance from Nkunku, and then I think just, again, some similarly concerning performances from Cole Palmer. Again, nice of others to step up and support him in that moment where he is struggling and looks like he might need a rest or need a bit of a break just to kind of either physically or mentally reset and recharge for the end of the season. Maybe you don't play him against Copenhagen. You give him a nice little break here between now and Leicester and get him really back into fine form. That would be interesting. I mean, he's now gone 14 Premier League matches without a single assist, which is kind of shocking considering how involved he is. He's at 6 total for the season, which puts him 2 behind Enzo Fernandez. And he's actually tied with Jadon Sancho now, which is like super interesting. That was not my next guest individual to think about who is that second person or third, tied for second person for assist in the team. Any other thoughts? Cole Palmer and Nkunku, attack related, better performance from Nkunku, but
yeah, I mean, Nkunku was fine. I mean, the goal, like I said, was good, and I'm happy that he got it. He desperately needed one too. Cole Palmer was the other one, trying to get the ball into the back of the net tonight. He really did need that. I think it buys him a little. buys him a temporary reprieve from some of the criticism that's out there about him. But I mean, it wasn't like a 10 out of 10 performance. And I think there was some stuff that really frustrated a lot of fans. He was standing around in the final third a lot. I just want to see him more active in that final third. Like, I don't expect him to be a perfect winger, defender, put in the effort of a Pedro Neto. At this point, that's just not who he is. Like, I think we all kind of see that and know that. But I do want to see him in the final third with the energy of a spring bunny, just bouncing around, trying to find the right space, trying to get the ball, trying to make an assist or a goal happen. And he just does seem at times to just not have that. And I'm not sure why that is or what the rationale is, but I'd love to see more of that because he's super dangerous. Like, when he is in those positions to shoot at goal, when he's in the box, opponents fear him, and they should, right? I mean, he's a proven goal scorer. Like, he can put the ball into the back of the net. I just want to see him get in better positions to do that more frequently. And yeah, Cole's broken right now. Like, just give him time off, do a ritual cleanse of Cobham, whatever you got to do. I mean, it's now kind of comical because he had a couple of one-on-ones with the goalkeeper today that didn't go in, that you're like, oof, like, well, you one of those situations where you can't buy a goal, even though he has the millions of pounds to do so. I think that's
Well, it was the same thing Nico had too, right? Like, Nico was looking for that goal and it just wasn't coming for him. And so you imagine it is going to come at some point here between now and the end of the season. And you just hope it happens sooner rather than later.
Sooner rather than later. And that, like, there was a moment in this game where he was clearly frustrated and was like laughing at himself for missing a chance. And the crowd got really behind. It was like the only time the crowd was really like overly present in this game, to be candid. The atmosphere was a little flat. And the crowd got behind him and were ginning him up. And he looked like he really appreciated that because he clearly is putting a ton of pressure on himself. He has the weight of the whole team on his shoulders to deliver. Like, this is a guy who is not, he doesn't take the shit lightly, and he's always trying stuff. Like, this is not the Nkunku problem that I just mentioned previously, right? Like, this is a guy who really does, put in a shift and just can't get it to go in right now. So hopefully, a little bit of a break here will be helpful.
Yeah, we're talking about breaks. We're going to get our last ad break out of the way, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the substitutions and academy performances that Enzo Maresca was allowed to have happen in this one. They were smaller cameos, so quick hits there. We'll talk about then league position for Chelsea, what that means for expectations heading into the final months of the season here. And then we'll talk and cover off on last thing, the protests and some of our thoughts on that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. So Enzo Maresca did have a comment post-match where he talked about the fact that he asked about youngsters coming off the bench. He said there were probably too many young players at the end. Talking about like the young players who were on the pitch relative to maybe the fact that we ended the match with a lower starting age than we actually started it with, which is usually not how that type of thing works. So okay, but then he followed up with the Chelsea Academy has always been a good one. We have many players like Levi Colwell, and hopefully in the future we will have much more. Obviously, nice for Levi Colwell to get a goal today. That was a big moment for that to happen. We also saw
was it December of 23, I think.
It's been a minute.
It's been over a year for sure. So yeah, good for him because he's good in the air. He should be better in the air. He's a specimen.
Yeah, and we saw Tyreek George get an assist too. Definitely, I think a pretty bright appearance for him as well. Set up Cucurella very, very nicely to take advantage of what was a ill-timed move by Ramsdale. So well done for him. I mean, we've been talking about Ty getting some opportunities here. This is the perfect type of way to acclimatize a young academy graduate into the team. Like, you don't have to start him. And I think there are people who, after our last podcast, were like, hey, like, you can't start Ty. Like, the drop off from like a Jaden or others is going to potentially be large. I'm not saying replace the entire team with Cobham tomorrow. Like, that's probably not the right end outcome, but you do need to find ways and opportunities. This match, perfect opportunity, particularly up 3-0 at halftime to go into the second half and even make an earlier change. And I think maybe the reason he didn't was you do have a long gap of time now between now and the next match. And I think if it had been a shorter turn, you might have seen more subs. So not just trying to defend Enzo Maresca, but that was maybe, I thought, my opinion on why some of the changes didn't happen sooner rather than later. But I mean, we saw Josh come on. We saw Mogu come on for an appearance, like for a courtesy 7+ extra time. And then Shim came on for the 1-ish to 3-ish minutes that he had available. So I don't know if I love Enzo's comment, but at the end of the day, like, you need to find those opportunities and you make those opportunities. I'm glad at least some players are getting them. It's not going to ever be as many as you want if you're looking to see the academy kind of flourish. But at the end of the day, we got to win. And so like we're picking at the tiniest of nits right here.
Yeah, I just don't like his press conferences at all. I just genuinely don't. I just don't know why that would be your starting quote. There were too many young players at the end. You fucking put him on. Why did you put him on if you felt like that? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, he seems like a guy who just doesn't want to be happy sometimes and then chooses to not be. But I mean, there in this one for me, like, again, nits to pick, but like, did you need to play Enzo Fernandez the entire 90 minutes or whatever it was? Probably not. Did you need to, play Malo Gusto, even though he had a slightly better game when Josh is there? Probably not. I don't know about Shim's readiness necessarily, or someone like Ishe's readiness, but like at 4-0 up, I think we're safe. I think we're gonna get the win.
You haven't met this Chelsea team, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, we fumbled some stuff this year, but whatever. So I just want to see more of that. I want to see more time. I want to see more trust. Ty is shown this year to be a dangerous option. Yes, he's young, and yes, I think he sometimes is in the try too hard, press too hard sort of category, and he gets himself into trouble by not letting the game come to him. But the only way he's ever going to get to be better is if he plays, like, and not in just conference league games that we're beating, Astana, comfortably, So I say that because I think it's important, and I don't understand the quote, but I hope when we are up big, and I hope if our bench, continues to be, made up of some young academy products, and hopefully we get a couple more debuts this year, that they are given the chance to go out there for more than courtesy minutes. Because while it is nice to play for Chelsea and get your debut and all that sort of stuff, it's nicer to feel like you're actually contributing in a game. And when you only contribute 8 minutes and you're up 4-0 and it's kind of just walking around, it's just not it's not the same. So, I do hope that they get more real minutes, especially Josh and Ty, who have been a part of the first team setup since October.
All right, well, let's talk then about league position, expected points, where we might finish before we talk about the protest. I will say, Chelsea are not mathematically eliminated out of title contention right now, just in case. Did want to bring that back. To it. 11 matches, 33. So 33 points on offer, Nick. That could take you up to 79. Liverpool at 64. They also only have 11 matches left. It is a narrow margin, but it could still happen.
Oh, my God. Go away. One win against the worst team in the league, and title's back on. Let's go.
Just talking about where we're at in the table, because other people who were previously looking behind and seeing us are now looking up and seeing us. Critical matches to come still in this game week between Tottenham and Man City, Liverpool and Newcastle. Forest and Arsenal, some really interesting matchups that either let us get closer to teams that are ahead of us potentially, or allow us the opportunity to see the ones who are very far ahead of us, allow those behind us now to create some separation for us on the table. Went to the analysts, which is Opta's website, to take a look at what they think the predicted table is now for the end of the season. So this is kind of where they think the expected points are going to be, where they think that Chelsea and others are going to end up based upon their kind of analysis here. Chelsea do not factor in to a top 4 finish, given the simulation at this point in time, just in case you're wondering. So that is not great. We would not necessarily like the way that this finishes here. Nick, are you feeling better about a top 4 finish? Are you feeling any better about top 5 finish, considering the coefficient looks a little bit better here?
No, you have to string a couple together before I get excited. I mean, you have a really important, a Bournemouth lose today, which is incredibly helpful for us. Newcastle play Liverpool tomorrow, so if Liverpool beat them, that would be great. With a win, City jumps right back above us. But then, if you're able to start building a gap from 5th to 6th, 7th, 8th, all that sort of stuff, then you start to get excited, right? If you enter the last 4 games of the season and you're 5 or 6 points up in 5th, then okay, we can really talk. It's not out of the realm possibility that would slip, but it'd be more comfortable than having to go the other way. I just don't know. And I don't know how the teams at the end of the season are going to fare yet.
Yeah.
Right. I think you're getting a little bit of a slip from Forest right now. I think you're seeing City, despite losing to Liverpool over the weekend, you're seeing City kind of come back into some form. You're seeing Newcastle on a tear, but they're like an injury away, as they always are, from going on another slide again. Like, it's just too unpredictable right now.
Yeah.
Bournemouth and Newcastle have been on a run. Bournemouth kind of now on a slide after a decent run of form. Brighton starting to get back in a decent little run of form, and they're only 3 points behind us after they were a bunch of points behind us earlier this season. Villa are super off and on. You just don't know what you're going to get out of them. They're actually now behind Fulham on 42 points. So, still all the way down to 11th. You're within 4 points of Chelsea. So it looks nice. We're in top 4 right now, and that's great. And you hope you stay there for the rest of the year, just because it would make it a much easier kind of pathway. But I mean, coming up is really all that matters. Like, Chelsea performing against Leicester in the league is all that matters. If you're able to get a result, a draw against Arsenal would be a phenomenal point, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about that Leicester game, right? If Forest were to lose against Arsenal in this upcoming match, or even drop a singular point, 48 potentially gives us an opportunity. If you beat Leicester, you go above them again. And now you're kind of really, really trying to kind of push for it. Whereas if Newcastle loses against Liverpool, which could be very, very likely, you then also get the separation too. So again, your point, definitely hear it. Like, there's a lot that needs to break in Chelsea's favor. We need to control our own destiny, but it is still too close to call on this one. We'll need Steve Kornacki and the khaki pants on the prognostication for this all the way up until the last day of the game season, because I feel like that is going to come down to that for Chelsea this year, and many other teams for their European future. Speaking of futures and things that are maybe in jeopardy due to some people's opinions or how they feel right now about Chelsea Football Club, we do want to talk about the fan protests that were outside the Bovril Gate at Stamford Bridge. They were there for a little bit beforehand. Reports size it anywhere from near 100 to up to 200. And obviously, when there's a crowd of people and people are mingling in back and forth, the size of something can move up and down. So I'll give them the high number and say, let's just say it's close to 200 fans, and we'll kind of land on that as a very optimistic number of what that is. We just saw a video of it as well. Multiple publications covered it across both fan Twitter and X accounts to the BBC and to Match of the Day, and this got coverage. Nick, got coverage as a fan protest. We've not really seen a fan protest around Chelsea Football Club and since the Super League conversation. That was probably the last big one. There was a minor one, I feel like, around the ownership purchasing period, but that was a very, very, if you're talking, this was if we said this was a minority of fans, that was like the minority of the minority of the minority of fans, like the third inside of a series of nesting dolls. I guess this was targeted at frustration around the ownership. There were chants related to Roman Abramovich, Blueco out, Bully, you're a fill in the blank.
Insert your favorite word there. Yep.
You should have brought Brighton. Chance for Jose Mourinho. Don't know how he got pulled in that one here, but yeah. I don't know if he loved that name check. You've won us fuck all, which I guess on the men's side is true, but they did win the women's league last season, so I guess that would not here nor there. I guess what are your thoughts maybe first on just the protest, and then we can talk about maybe our feelings. I think we've been pretty consistent in saying like where our frustrations lie with the ownership group, with the sporting directors, with the managers, with the kind of players. But I think we can kind of re-solidify like where we might align with some of the sentiments from the fan protest, because we just because we do a podcast doesn't mean we're not fans. But also at the end of the day, like where we might disagree within the execution of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking a little bit before the podcast about this, and like there is value in protests. Protests are inherently a good thing. I believe in protests. I believe in peaceful protests. Obviously this was a peaceful protest. There were reports that police were there, but there were no incidents of any kind, which is exactly what you want to hear, right? Protests are really valuable tools because if you feel like, you are seeing a club slip into mediocrity and want to do something about it, or you have a very specific thing that you want to talk about that isn't being heard at the shadow board level or through direct comms of the club, this is a way to kind of reintroduce yourself in a very public way that could be slightly embarrassing for the ownership, but still, prove a point. And again, I was not really sure of how this protest would go. I was surprised they got 200 people because there was a couple of interviews done last week that were pretty tough to listen to that, I think didn't really set this thing up for the best success. But, at the end of the day, there are a bunch of, disconcerted fans, and they largely targeted this at Blueco, at Bully, at Clear Lake. And their message was get out of the club. And so I guess, Dan, what are your thoughts about
it? So I don't think I mean, they're kind of contractually obligated to be around for an extended period of time still. Like, so I think that is there's a need to try to foster a relationship in some way, shape, or form. And I agree with you. Protesting is, definitely a mechanism for change and for being able to find a way to platform ideas to a larger group of people. I don't necessarily know how coherent or what if the objective is, hey, leave our club. Like, I don't think that's going to be an outcome of the protests. Like, there's a larger viewpoint of like, hey, hey, if you're saying, hey, you guys suck at doing this, and you said you were going to be really good at it, that would be like a more legitimate line of like a statement. And like, here's what we would like to see. Like, here are the 1, 2, 3 things. Like, they're not going to leave the club. So like, I don't think that's an objective like thing to ask for. But maybe say like, hey, you're not good enough. You're not putting out good enough of a product. If you raise our ticket prices, we're going to be pretty pissed. And I think that's like a legitimate one. I think things like, hey, you said you were going to have a really great plan around building a stadium. And like, we now are multiple years into this. We have no idea what's going to happen to the future of Stamford Bridge or a different site. Like, that's kind of shocking. You said you were going to figure out how to fix the commercial situation in this club, and we don't even have a front of kid sponsor now.
Yeah, I mean, you're stealing my line here. This is I think this was just a protest out of anger, frankly. And like, anger's a useful, anger's a useful tool, but it didn't have an end outcome attached to it. These guys were 6.5 years away from even the opportunity contractually to sell the club. They've invested billions of dollars. Now, you, as a protester, may think they've invested those dollars poorly. and it'd be hard to disagree with you, right? Like there are tons of reasons why you'd be correct. I just don't think this was the best. If your end outcome was we want to see the table, we want to have a conversation, calling someone a blank is not the best way to foster that conversation. It just isn't. Whether you like that or not, I don't care. Like that just is the way of the world. If you were on the opposite side of this and someone held a protest about you and their only reason was to just yell and scream, is that the person that you'd want to sit down and have a beer with and hash some shit out? Probably not. So, like you were saying, Dan, there are plenty of good reasons, specific reasons, and targeted reasons that would be backed by more than 200 people, but they have to come together in a coherent way. You mentioned ticket prices. That's a great fucking reason to protest. Ticket prices are out of control. They're probably going to be raised again. The team hasn't won anything in a few years. What are we doing here? That's a great one. The away subsidies for things like busing and stuff like that are pennies on the dollar to the billion-dollar spenders, right? That just feel petty and stupid, like you don't get the club. A great reason to protest. The thing that it should have been today, which is the sporting director's performance, right? They're the ones making the calls. Great reason to protest. Who are these guys? Why are they so bad at their jobs? What's going on, right? Things like the Super League or changes in league, play structure, whatever, things that are going to ruin what you know of the game. You mentioned Stamford Bridge already, Dan. That's a phenomenal one to protest. Like, what are we doing here? What is going on? And connected to that, what is going on with this divide in the ownership? Are you guys friends or are you fucking not friends? Like, what is going on? Like, we want to know. Like, that's a legitimate reason to protest. It's very specific. It's targeted. The state of finances at the club is a great reason to protest. No front of kit sponsor. What the hell, man? You guys said this was not a terribly well-run business, and yet 2 years running, you can't get a front of kit sponsor? What the hell is going on? Are you going to be busted by PSR or financial fair play if we do get into the Champions League? Like, great questions for the billion-pound spenders, right? These are all great reasons to protest. But what I felt like this lacked was an end goal. I don't think, unless it was just to get on TV, then congratulations, that was achieved, definitely, and it was covered. But if there's like a tangible outcome, and like Dan, you and I both work in, with serious people. These guys are serious people. Private equity guys are not, emotional people. They try and take emotion out of decisions, and that is probably another disconnect with the very emotional fan base, right? That they're data-driven people, and right now their decisions haven't worked. Their data-driven decisions, that's a tongue twister, that one, have not worked. But are you hoping to get a seat at the table? Are you hoping to get a policy reversed? Are you hoping to get communication more regularly from what is the goal? I would love it if there's a bigger organization, a better communication, better end outcomes with this club. Like, there has to be, because it doesn't feel tenable right now. But like, you have to go about it a different way. And I'm sorry for going on a rant here, but like, that to me is just what I would do.
Hopefully you've enjoyed a little bit of additional conversation on this one beyond the typical match review. More content coming your way on the channel this week. We're going to have to get prepared for a weekend without the men's team, but that means we'll have some content about the Chelsea women's team coming up back from their break. We'll talk a little bit then next week as we get into the preview for the match against Copenhagen in the Europa League Europa Conference League. That's right. We're not in the Europa League yet. Hopefully not next season. Hopefully it's one up from that. But that's good for this episode. So until next time, Chelsea fans, we appreciate you being along for the ride, and you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.